What's up guys, Asian here with another build video, and today we're going to be going over the Templar healer. So Templar healers are still among the strongest healers in the game right now. As of Harrowstorm, not much has changed for healers. None of the sets that were introduced really were made for healing, and there were no big balance changes that kind of warranted any sort of huge changes to the healer's toolkit. So Templar healers are still going to be one of the most highly desired healer specs in the game right now, and pretty much everything in this video is going to be very similar, if not identical, to the prior patches video in Dragonhold. So this build video is taking a look at skills, and we will be talking about sort of how to go about healing, just sort of very cursory surface level look at what you want to do while healing. If you're interested in knowing what gear I'm running, check out the healer gear video, which should be popping up in the upper right hand corner right now. That'll give you an idea of what sort of gear you're going to want to run as a healer. So let's go ahead and get started here. So for our front bar, this is the Restoration Staff bar. We are running Illustrious Healing, Combat Prayer, Power of the Light, Extended Ritual, Energy Orb, and Aggressive Warhorn. We'll go back and discuss why we're using each of these abilities in a few seconds. For the back bar, we have Luminous Shards, Elemental Drain, Blockade of Storms, Challenge Focus, Overflowing Altar, and Aggressive Warhorn again. Now going through each of these abilities in turn and explaining why we would want to use them. First, we have Illustrious Healing. This is just a blanket heal over time that you can put down. It's sort of your lay and forget heal. So it lasts for 12 seconds and it heals, in this instance, unbuffed, 1778 health every second. So when it is buffed, you'll be healing for 2k or higher. Now, one thing I do want to point out here is that because I'm using the Master Restoration Staff, I need to run Illustrious Healing. You might not need to run Illustrious Healing if you're not running the Master's Restoration Staff. So you will potentially swap this out with another ability depending on which set you're running. For example, if you're running Zens, then you're going to need a lot of dots, and you might end up dropping this if you're not running the Master's Restoration Staff. Combat Prayer should be pretty obvious for the Minor Berserk buff. It's one of the most consistent ways to get Minor Berserk in the game. It also does act as a burst heal. You can see in this case just shy of 5.9k health when you activate it. It is an AoE burst heal as well. So when it is buffed, and if you are lucky enough to get a crit heal, then it does heal for quite a bit of health here. But you're primarily using it there for the Minor Berserk that it provides. So this just boosts your overall damage from you and your allies. So really strong buff here to help improve overall group DPS. Next we have Power of the Light. This serves two purposes. If you are running Martial Knowledge, then Power of the Light will basically help manage your stamina a little bit. It does cost stamina to use this ability, just shy of 1.6k stamina, so it's a little bit easier to manage this because 1.6k is typically speaking going to be lower than the cost of bashing or dodge rolling on a Templar healer, so it's a little bit easier to kind of fine-tune how much stamina you need to use up if you're running Power of the Light. The second and more common reason of running Power of the Light is for the Minor Fracture, Minor Breach. There are a few other sources of Minor Fracture, Minor Breach in the game right now, but Power of the Light is definitely going to be the most consistent and one of the longer lasting sources of Minor Fracture, Minor Breach. It lasts for 9 seconds, so really great for single target boss fights. For more trash fights, typically speaking, the set Defiled Dragon will be worn by the tank, but it is still useful to have this in trash fights because you can apply it to multiple enemies at a time. Then we have Extended Ritual. This is also another sort of lay and forget heal. It's much wider than Illustrious Healing. The radius is about 50% larger, so covers a wider area. It also provides a unique synergy called Purify. As long as somebody has a debuff on them, they can activate the Purify synergy, which cleanses all debuffs from that person who activated the synergy, and it also gives them a small heal. So really strong move here for the Templar healer. Now, if you want to do a little bit of additional damage, you could also run the other morph, which is Ritual of Retribution. So this also damages enemies. The heal is a little bit stronger as well, just a hair stronger. It still has the Purify synergy. The only thing is it lasts for 12 seconds, so you will need to cast this more often. But Ritual Retribution is a good option if you also want to deal a good amount of damage as well. Energy Orb for the heal, as well as the Combustion Synergy, which returns resources to your allies. So the heal itself was actually really strong here, so you can see just shy of 1k health every half second while the orb is traveling around. So you can typically get anywhere between like 5 to 10 seconds on a single person, depending on where you're standing in relation to that person when you use orbs. So that translates to quite a bit of healing. So Energy Orb is the strongest heal in the game right now in terms of total healing done, healing done per second. Now, just keep in mind that unlike in prior patches, you can only have one energy orb out at a time. This was changed in the Scalebreaker patch. For those guys who are coming back from older patches, you can only have one orb out. So don't spam the orbs anymore. Just send one out. Make sure to kind of line up where it's going to be so you're able to heal everybody as it's flying out. Now for this ultimate slot, I have Aggressive Warhorn double slotted, but you do have a couple of options when it comes to this front bar ultimate slot. You can obviously keep the Aggressive Warhorns for the Max Magicka, Max Stamina, and the Major Force, but if you don't want to run that, if you want to run this just strictly on one bar, you could also run Solar Prison, which deals some good amount of damage, but it's primarily there for the Major Main, which reduces damage done by 30% for anybody within the area of the Solar Prison. Another very common ultimate I see used is going to be Reviving Barrier, so this just gives out a very large damage shield to everybody within 12 meters of you, so it hits up to 12 people, and it also has a heal over time while you have the shield up, so it's actually a really nice tool for survivability, for progression groups, to use in those sort of high damage scenarios. Now for our back bar, we have Luminous Shards. This basically covers the same niche role as Orbs for the Combustion Synergy, just returns some additional resources. It also deals a little bit of damage as well, so if you want to deal a little bit more damage, it's also nice to run. I like shards over orbs, or to say, you should use shards over orbs because shards is an immediate resource return. Orbs take some time to travel, so if you're standing away from the tank, it'll take some time for the orb to get to the tank. So if you want immediate resource to be returned, you are going to want to run Luminous Shards. It's not absolutely necessary to run, but the immediacy of it is a lot. Basically makes it a must-have in my opinion, because there are instances where you want to give out the resources right away to somebody who's far away from an orb. Elemental Drain for the Major Breach and Minor Magicka Steal. There is another source of Minor Magicka Steal on a Templar Healer's toolkit, and that is Radiant Aura, but it doesn't provide Major Breach. So if your tank is running Pierce Armor and you have that Major Breach, you can run Radiant Aura instead of Elemental Drain for the Minor Magicka Steal. Locative Storms, 1 for the damage and 2 to help proc your back bar enchant. Channeled Focus for the Major Resolve, Major Ward, just Major Resolve, plus you also get some Magicka back, so it just helps out your overall sustain. You don't have to run it if you don't feel like you need additional sustain bonus. An Overflowing Altar for the Minor Lifesteal, as well as the Blood Feast Synergy. The Blood Feast Synergy is really nice, it's a unique synergy, and it is very helpful for those situations where you need a very strong burst heal right away. And then of course we have Aggressive Warhorn. Now there are a few other abilities I want to touch upon here that you might want to consider running. Starting off with the Restoring Light passive skill tree. These two first abilities, Breath of Life and Ritual of Rebirth, are basically your burst heals. Ritual of Rebirth costs more, but it is an AoE burst heal. Breath of Life costs less, but it doesn't heal in an AoE. It basically heals only 2 people. So if you need sort of a burst heal, definitely stick with, try to use Breath of Life or Ritual of Rebirth, depending on whether you want the AoE or you want the single target heal there. Not really used too often in Trials because it only heals 1 person Breath of Life. Ritual Rebirth sees a little bit more use in Trials because it heals multiple people, but even then, you don't really need burst heals very often in Trials because a lot of damage is either a one-shot or can be easily healed through just having your heal over times down. Under the Resto Staff line, Radiating Regeneration is really great for 4-man content because it heals up to 3 people or gives them a heal over time up to 3 people, so really nice to have there. If you're running a Blackrose Prison Restoration Staff, you will need to run Healing Ward, so just make sure to have this ability unlocked if you're running the Blackrose Prison Restoration Staff. In terms of a burst heal, not very useful on a Templar healer because we have Breath of Life and Ritual Rebirth, but for other classes, it's good to have this here because not all classes have a burst heal. Then we also have Siphon Spirit or Quick Siphon as well. So these are just sources of minor life steal if you don't want to run Blood Altar. These don't cost any resources to cast, unlike Blood Altar, which costs health to cast. So cheaper, doesn't have a cast time associated with it any longer. Plus, Siphon Spirit also provides minor Magicka steal, so kind of hit two birds with one stone, so to speak, with Siphon Spirit. If you need a shield for whatever reason, run the light armor shield, obviously, Harness Magicka or Dampened Magic. Beyond that, you have dots that you want to have on hand if you're going to be running Zen. So things like Soul Trap under the Soul Tree line, Scalding Rune under the Mage's Guild line, Entropy under the Mage's Guild line, in case you're running Zens. Just make sure to have these dots active. You should learn them, I should say. Everything under the Anota line should be unlocked. Shadow Soak for the Black Widow synergy. Not as strong as it used to be, but it's still essentially free damage, so why not run it when you have the chance to do so. There will be some fights where you need to taunt certain things. There are maybe half a dozen fights where you want a taunt, so just make sure to have this unlocked. Then Bone Surge for the major vitality that it provides from the Spinal Surge synergy. Situationally useful, you'll usually find this being used where you need to kind of give everybody out a large chunk of healing because of some sort of group healing debuff that goes out. Classic example would be in Cloud Restoring Execute to help combat Baneful Mark for progression guilds. Bone Surge is nice for situations like that. And then under the Alliance War line, Efficient Purge to help remove negative effects. While the Purify synergy does remove all negative effects, it is a synergy, so you're only able to use it once every 20 seconds. There are fights where debuffs go out more than, in a frequency greater than once every 20 seconds, so you're going to want an Efficient Purge to help cleanse those debuffs there. So each of these abilities can be swapped out on an as-needed basis. So for example, if you don't feel like you need additional heal over time with Extended Ritual, or let's say you have another source of Minor Fracture, Minor Breach, let's say you have a Stamina Templar in group, you can swap this ability out, replace it with something else that you need for the fight. Backbar. Again, for example, if you don't need Ellie Drain because your tank's running Pierce Armor, and you can run something like Radiant Ward or Siphon Spirit. If you don't feel like you need to sustain for Channel Focus, you can swap that out for something else. Same thing with Shards. If you feel like Orbs is enough, then you don't need Shards, then you can replace it with something else. So you do have a lot of flexibility here when it comes to your skill bars here as a healer. So definitely pick and take what you need for each specific scenario here. And that pretty much covers it for skills for a healer. Now to quickly kind of take a surface look at how you want to play a healer. Generally speaking, healing is more or less just letting your heal over times do the work for you and then maintaining buffs and debuffs. So for this particular setup here, we have three primary heal over times. We have Illustrious Healing, Extended Ritual, and Energy Orbs. If we have all of them out at a time, and in terms of buffed healing done per second, we're probably sitting at roughly 4 to 5k healing done per second within that area where all three are able to tick. So that's actually quite a lot of healing. So your typical DPS will be running somewhere between 17 to 20k health. So in 3 to 4 seconds, you're going to have a DPS healed up all the way up to full. And if they need a burst heal right away, you have Combat Prayer there. So with their heal over times, we don't really need to worry as much about just raw healing potential because the heal over times will do the job for us. Instead, once we have our hots down, we can then focus in on maintaining buffs and debuffs. So Minor Berserk from Combat Prayer, Power of the Light for Minor Fracture, Minor Breach. Want to make sure to have Blockade down at all times in order to make sure we're proccing our enchant, whether that's a Shocked enchant or a Crusher enchant, or even like a weapon damage enchant. And just try to have things like Blood Altar down, or Shadow Soak, make sure to cast that every once in a while and make sure to get the synergy out. So a lot of healing is basically, once you have all of your heal over times out, then it's just managing buffs and debuffs. So I highly recommend having some sort of debuff buff tracker for your teammates as a healer. So there are a couple of add-ons out there that will be able to do that for you. Action Duration Reminder is a pretty good one to hold on to, but there are others out there. So healing is better seen rather than talked about. Unfortunately, I don't really heal very often on ESO. It's not a role that I typically play as, but there are links in the description below to people who do heal more regularly, and they do heal at the highest end content, so endgame PvE content, trials content. There are a few older streams where I used to heal, but those are not very recent, so just bear that in mind when you take a look at it. For example, these are pre-Scalebreaker most likely, so I'm pumping out a lot of orbs, versus now we only pump out one orb. So I do recommend checking out the channels below in the description for more details about healing. As always, you can always ask questions here on this channel. But because healing is not my forte, I might redirect you to somebody else, or I might need some time to do the research and ask people around for the correct answer there. But you are free to ask questions here if you guys have anything about the build or about healing in general. But that's it for this video. Hopefully you guys found this informative. Again, links in the description below to some streams and YouTubers who do, or I should say just content creators who do heal full time. So feel free to jump over there and ask some questions if you guys have questions about healing. Also down below you will have links to the build on the UESP's build editor and a brief description of everything that I covered here. Again, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.